Ambassador Threlvix pressed his four-fingered hand against the cold viewport of the observation ship. Below him, the human colony spread across the valley like a painting. Small houses with gardens, children running between buildings, smoke rising from cooking fires. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. They seemed so normal, he said quietly. Behind him, his team worked at their stations. There were 6 of them in total, all Carthy, like himself. They were a small species, barely reaching the chest of an average human. Their skin was pale blue, their eyes large and dark. They had evolved from prey animals on a world of endless grasslands. Fear was written into their blood. Caution was their oldest friend. Normal is not the word I would use, said Velshi, his chief science officer. She did not look up from her scanner. Their heart rates are elevated compared to most council species. Their body temperature runs hot. And their eyes. She paused. Their eyes track movement in ways that make me uncomfortable. Threlvix understood. He had met humans before, during the diplomatic talks on Station Vertex. They had been polite, friendly, even. One of them had made him laugh with a strange story about a creature called a duck. But even then, even while laughing, Threlvix had noticed how the human's eyes followed every movement in the room. How his body stayed loose but ready. How he always sat with his back to the wall. Humans were predators. This was not an insult. It was simply biology. Their ancestors had hunted animals across vast distances, chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. They had forward-facing eyes for tracking prey. They had teeth designed for tearing meat. They sweat through their skin to cool their bodies during long pursuits. Most species in the Galactic Council had evolved from prey animals. They found humans deeply unsettling. Some called them the smiling hunters because of how they showed their teeth when happy. Others called them the patient ones because of their terrible ability to wait. But the council needed new members. The galaxy was vast, and threats were many. Humanity had technology, numbers, and something else that interested the council greatly. They worked together in ways that seemed almost supernatural. So the observation mission had been approved. Threlvix and his team would spend 30 cycles watching the human colony on Kepler 442b. They would study their behavior. They would determine if humanity had suppressed their predatory instincts enough to join galactic civilization. Beginning standard observation protocol, announced Kethmer, the youngest member of the team. He activated the cloaking field that hid their ship. We are invisible to their sensors. They will not know we are here. Threlvix nodded and settled into his observation chair. The colony below was called New Svalbard. It was a mining settlement, home to approximately 3,000 humans. They extracted rare minerals from the mountains and shipped them to Earth. Simple work. Simple lives. For the first 5 cycles, nothing interesting happened. Threlvix watched humans wake up, eat breakfast, go to work, and come home. He watched them argue about small things and laugh about smaller things. He watched parents carry sleeping children to bed. He watched old couples hold hands while walking through gardens. They are remarkably boring, Velshi complained on the 3rd cycle. But Threlvix was not bored. He was fascinated. Because underneath all the normal behavior, he kept noticing small things. Strange things. He noticed how humans always seemed to know where each other were. A mother would turn her head a moment before her child called out. A worker would step aside just as another worker needed to pass. They moved around each other like water flowing around stones. Smooth, natural, without thought. He noticed how they touched each other constantly. A hand on a shoulder, a pat on the back, a quick hug. Physical contact seemed as important to them as breathing. He noticed how they shared food, not just with family, but with neighbors, with strangers, with anyone who seemed hungry. One evening, he watched an old woman bring soup to a young man who lived alone. She was not related to him. She barely knew him, but she brought soup anyway. Pack behavior, Threlvik said to himself. They are pack animals. On the 6th cycle, he began writing his preliminary report. Humans display strong social bonding patterns, he wrote. They form complex networks of relationships that extend beyond family units. They share resources freely within their community. They show remarkable awareness of each other's physical and emotional states. This suggests a highly developed sense of empathy and cooperation. He paused, thinking about how to phrase the next part. Their predatory instincts appear to be dormant under normal conditions. They show no signs of aggression toward each other. They resolve conflicts through discussion rather than violence. Their children play together without establishing dominance hierarchies. This is unusual for a predator species. He was pleased with his observations. The report would be favorable. Humanity would be accepted into the Council. Trade agreements would be signed. The galaxy would welcome a new member. Then the alarm started. Threlvik jumped in his chair as red lights flashed across his screens. Warning signals screamed through the ship. For one terrible moment, he thought they had been discovered. What is happening? He demanded. Kethmer's fingers flew across his console. It is not us, Ambassador. The alarms are coming from the colony. Something has happened in the mines. Threlvik turned to the viewport. Below, humans were running. Not away from something, but toward something. Toward the mountain where the main mine shaft was located. Seismic event detected, Velshi reported, her voice tight with confusion. The primary mine shaft has collapsed. Scans indicate. She stopped. Her dark eyes went wide. Scans indicate 43 life signs trapped underground. 12 of them are children. The bridge went silent. Threlvik watched the humans running toward the mountain. More and more of them, pouring out of houses and buildings, dropping whatever they were holding. Running. What are they doing? Kethmer asked. Threlvik did not answer. He was watching the humans' faces on his magnified display. Something was changing. Something he could not quite name. The smiles were gone. The laughter was gone. Something else was taking their place. Something old. Something hungry. Something that made Threlvik want to hide. I do not know, he whispered. But I think we are about to find out. The change happened fast. Too fast for Threlvik to understand. One moment, the humans of New Svalbard were ordinary colonists. Farmers and miners and shopkeepers. Parents and children and grandparents. They laughed and worried and complained about small things like any other species. The next moment, they were something else entirely. Threlvik watched through his observation screens as a woman dropped the flowers she had been planting. She did not throw them down in panic. She did not cry out in fear. She simply opened her hands and let them fall. Then she turned and walked toward the mine. Her face was empty. Her eyes were focused. She moved like water flowing downhill. Inevitable. Unstoppable. Everywhere he looked, he saw the same thing happening. A man set down his tools with careful precision. A teenager stopped mid-sentence and walked away from her friends. An old woman stood up from her rocking chair and began moving faster than Threlvik had ever seen an elderly person move. Velshi, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Are you recording this? Yes, Ambassador. Her voice was strange, flat, afraid. What are their vital signs showing? She was quiet for a long moment. I do not understand what I am seeing. Threlvik turned to look at her. Her pale blue face had gone almost white. Explain, he ordered. Velshi's hands trembled as she read from her scanner. Their heart rates have increased by 40%. Adrenaline levels have spiked beyond anything in our medical databases. Cortisol, norepinephrine, dopamine, all elevated to dangerous levels. She paused. Ambassador, these readings should indicate extreme panic. These humans should be screaming, crying, running in random directions. But they are not, Threlvik said. No, they are not. They are completely calm, completely focused. She looked up at him with huge, frightened eyes. Their bodies are screaming in panic, but their minds are hunting. Threlvik's turned back to the VIEWPORT below. The humans had reached the mine entrance. There was no shouting, no arguing, no wasted motion. Within minutes, they had organized themselves into teams. Some began clearing rubble. Others set up equipment. A group of older humans established what looked like a medical station. There was no leader giving orders. No one stepped forward to take command. They simply knew what to do. They knew where to go. They knew what each other needed. Pack coordination, Threlvik's breathed. They are acting as a single organism. He focused his screen on a human male standing near the mine entrance. The man was perhaps 40 years old, with gray in his hair and lines on his face. His hands were bleeding. His clothes were torn. He had been working for only 20 minutes, but he looked like he had been in a war. Identify this human, Threlvik ordered. Kethmer ran the scan. Marcus Chun, mining engineer. His daughter, Lily Chun, age 9, is among the trapped children. Threlvik watched Marcus Chun lift a piece of metal that should have been too heavy for one human to move. His muscles strained. His face twisted. A normal person would have stopped. A normal person would have asked for help. Marcus Chun did not stop. He did not ask for help. He lifted the metal and threw it aside like it weighed nothing. Then he reached for the next piece. His stress hormone levels are at critical thresholds, Velshi reported. His body is burning through its energy reserves at an unsustainable rate. If he continues like this, he will collapse within hours. He does not care, Threlvik said. He understood now. He understood what he was seeing. His child is in danger. Nothing else matters. The hours passed. Night fell over New Svalbard, but the work did not stop. The humans brought out lights and kept digging. They brought out machines and kept drilling. When the machines broke, they fixed them or built new ones from spare parts. Threlvik did not sleep. He could not look away. He watched a young woman, barely 20 years old, calculate drilling angles in her head. She drew diagrams in the dirt with her finger, making calculations that should have taken a team of engineers with computers. She was not an engineer. Her file said she worked in the colony's bakery. But somehow, in this moment, she knew exactly what to do. He watched the colony's doctor move between injured workers. A man had crushed his hand under a rock. The doctor wrapped it in bandages, gave him pills, and sent him back to work. There was no sympathy in her eyes. No comfort. Just cold efficiency. Keep them working. Keep them functional. The trapped children were running out of air. He watched volunteers rotate into dangerous positions without being asked. They seemed to sense when someone was getting tired. They appeared at exactly the right moment to take over. No words were exchanged. No signals were given. They just knew. This is wrong, Kethmer whispered. He was young, barely out of training. His eyes were wide with fear. This is not normal. They are not acting like individuals. They are acting like a predator hunting its prey, finished a deep voice from behind them. Threlvik turned. Commander Vrexinol stood in the doorway of the bridge. He was not Korthi. He was Vrexian, a member of the warrior caste that served as the observation team's military advisor. His species had evolved from predators, like the humans. He stood taller than any Korathi, with thick scales and sharp teeth. and right now, he looked afraid. "I have seen this before," Vrexenol said quietly. "In the ancient wars of my people. When a pack is threatened, when cubs are in danger, the hunters become something else. Something more." He walked to the viewport and stared down at the humans working in the darkness. "We called it the blood focus, the moment when fear becomes fuel, when pain becomes power, when the individual dies and the pack becomes one. I thought your people abandoned such practices generations ago," Threlvik said. "We did. We had to. The cost was too high." Vrexenol's claws tapped against the viewport glass. "The humans do not seem to care about the cost." Threlvik looked back at the screens. He found Marcus Chun again. The man had been working for 8 hours straight. He had not eaten. He had not rested. Blood was dripping from his nose. His body was destroying itself, and he simply kept working. His daughter was underground. She was running out of air dot, and Marcus Chun would tear down the entire mountain with his bare hands if he had to. "We should leave," Kethmer said suddenly. His voice was high with fear. "We should not be watching this. This is not meant for outsiders to see." But Threlvik shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We were sent to observe humanity, to understand what they truly are." He stared at the humans working through the darkness, driven by something older than civilization, something stronger than reason. This is what they truly are. And the council needs to know. Below, in the cold night air, the humans kept digging. And the clock kept ticking. 17 hours of oxygen remained. The night stretched on forever. Threlvik sat in his observation chair, his body stiff with exhaustion, his eyes burning from staring at screens. He had not slept. He could not sleep. What was happening below demanded his witness. The humans had been working for 14 hours now. 14 hours without rest, without food, without pause. By every medical standard the Korethi understood, they should have collapsed long ago. Their bodies should have shut down. Their minds should have broken, but they kept working. Valshi stood beside him, her scanner never leaving her hands. She had stopped speaking hours ago. Now she just read the numbers silently, her face growing paler with each passing hour. "Tell me," Threlvik said finally. She spoke without looking up. "Muscle damage across 87% of active workers. Stress fractures in multiple individuals. Organ strain in at least 20 cases. Several humans are showing signs of internal bleeding." She paused. "Ambassador, they are dying. Slowly, but they are dying. And they are not stopping." Threlvik focused his screen on a woman he had been watching for hours. Her file said her name was Sarah Okonkwo. She was a geologist. She had been directing the drilling operation since the beginning, making calculations that saved hours of wasted effort. She had not sat down once. Now, as he watched, her hands began to shake. Not from fear, from exhaustion. Her body was running out of fuel, but her eyes remained focused. Her voice remained steady. She pointed to a spot on the rock face and said something to the crew. They nodded and moved their drill. How was she still functioning? Threlvik asked. "She should not be," Valshi answered. "By our standards, she should be unconscious. But humans—" She trailed off, searching for words. "Humans have something we do not. Their bodies can burn reserves that other species cannot access. Adrenaline suppresses pain. Cortisol mobilizes emergency energy. Their nervous systems can simply ignore damage that would cripple a Korethi. For how long? I do not know. Hours. Perhaps days. But eventually—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Eventually, there would be a price to pay. Threlvik found Marcus Chen on his screens again. The man had not left his position near the main shaft. He was moving rocks by hand now, his fingers bloody and raw. One of his shoulders hung at a strange angle. Dislocated, Threlvix realized. His shoulder was dislocated, and he was still working. A young man approached Marcus with a water bottle. Marcus did not take it. He did not even look at it. The young man said something, gesturing at Marcus's injured shoulder. Marcus shook his head once hard and went back to work. The young man did not argue. He simply nodded and walked away. "They know," Threlvix said quietly. "They all know what they are doing to themselves. And they are choosing to do it anyway." Commander Vrexenol stood in the corner of the bridge, his arms crossed over his scaled chest. He had not spoken in hours. But now he stepped forward. "You do not understand," he said. "You see them destroying themselves and you think it is madness. But it is not madness. It is math." Threlvix looked at him. "Math? Simple calculation. 43 lives underground, including 12 children. The oxygen will run out in hours. Every minute of delay is another breath stolen from those children. Every pause, every rest, every moment of weakness costs lives." Vrexenol's yellow eyes were steady. "So they do not pause. They do not rest. They do not allow themselves weakness. Because the math is simple. Their pain is worth less than those children's lives. But they will die," Kethmer said from his station. His voice cracked. "Some of them will die from this. The damage they are doing." "Yes," Vrexenol agreed. "Some of them might die. And they have accepted that. Every single one of them, working out there in the dark, has accepted that they might die to save those children." He paused. "This is what pack predators do. This is what humans are. They will sacrifice themselves for the pack without hesitation, without regret, without even slowing down." Silence fell over the bridge. Threlvix turned back to his screens. He watched a teenage boy, no more than 17, carrying equipment that should have required 2 adults. He watched an old woman with silver hair working a pneumatic drill, her entire body vibrating with the force of it. He watched a man with bandages over his eyes, blinded by debris, still sorting through rocks by touch. They were all dying. Slowly, piece by piece, they were tearing themselves apart, and not one of them was stopping. Then, in the 16th hour, it happened. The main drill broke through into a pocket of stable air. Shouts rose from the worksite. For one moment, just one moment, the humans stopped moving. They looked at each other. Some of them almost smiled, but the moment passed quickly. The pocket was still too small, too unstable. The trapped miners were still out of reach. The humans turned back to their work. The machines roared back to life. Threlvix checked his data. Oxygen underground. 2 hours remaining. The humans dug faster. Velshi made a sound beside him. A small, frightened sound. "What is it?" Threlvix asked. "Marcus Chun," she whispered. "Look at Marcus Chun." Threlvix focused his screen on the man. Marcus had not stopped working when the drill broke through. He had barely paused. But something had changed. His movements were different now, slower, more deliberate. His dislocated shoulder hung uselessly at his side, but he worked with his other arm, pulling at rocks twice his size. His face had changed too. The desperation was gone. The pain was gone. There was nothing left but focus. Pure, absolute focus. "His brain activity is different," Velshi said. "The pain centers have gone quiet. The fear responses have shut down. He is not suppressing anything anymore. He is simply beyond it." "What does that mean?" Threlvix asked. Velshi looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. "It means his body has given up trying to stop him. It means he has pushed so far past his limits that his own biology has surrendered. He will not feel pain. He will not feel fear. He will not stop until his body physically fails." Threlvix stared at the screen, at the human male who had become something more than human. Something ancient. Something terrible. He will get his daughter back, Threlvix said quietly. Or he will die trying. Yes, Valshi agreed. That is exactly right. Below, in the fading darkness of early morning, the humans kept working. They were bleeding. They were breaking. They were dying. And they would not stop. Not until it was finished. Not until the pack was whole again. 1 hour of oxygen remained. The machine screamed against the rock. And somewhere in the darkness, 43 humans waited to see if their pack would reach them in time. The drill broke through at hour 17. Threlvix was watching when it happened. He saw the moment the machine punched through the final layer of rock. He saw the humans freeze, just for a heartbeat. He saw them look at each other with expressions he could not read. Then they moved. There was no celebration. No cheering. No tears of joy. The humans simply flowed forward like water through a crack. They poured into the shaft, carrying ropes and stretchers and medical equipment. They moved in perfect silence, their bodies working together like parts of a single machine. Threlvix switched his screens to the underground cameras that had survived the collapse. The image was grainy and dark, but he could see the trapped miners huddled together in a small pocket of stable rock. Children sat in the laps of adults. Faces were pale and drawn. The air was thin. Some of them were barely conscious. Then the rescue team appeared. A human male came through the tunnel first. He was covered in dirt and blood. His hands were wrapped in bloody bandages. He did not speak. He simply pointed at the nearest miner and made a gesture. 2 more rescuers appeared behind him and carefully lifted the miner onto a stretcher. It was fast. It was efficient. It was terrifying. Threlvix watched as the humans worked through the group of survivors. There were no emotional reunions. No crying embraces. When a rescuer found their family member among the trapped, they simply nodded once and kept working. Personal feelings did not matter. Getting everyone out mattered. Marcus Chun reached his daughter Lily after 10 minutes. The girl was conscious but weak, leaning against a rock with her eyes half closed. When she saw her father, she tried to smile. Marcus did not smile back. His face remained empty, focused. He picked her up with his one working arm and carried her toward the tunnel. His dislocated shoulder dragged uselessly at his side. He did not seem to notice. Beside Threlvix, Velshi made a small sound of horror. "What is wrong?" Threlvix asked. "The scans," she whispered. "The scans of the rescue workers. They are carrying injuries that should make movement impossible. Torn muscles, cracked bones, internal damage. And they are walking. They are carrying people. They are climbing through collapsed tunnels." She shook her head. "This should not be possible. Their bodies should not allow this." "But it is happening," Threlvix said. "Yes, it is happening. And I do not understand how." The extraction took 47 minutes. Every single trapped miner was brought to the surface. Every single child was returned to open air. When the last survivor emerged from the tunnel, the humans stood in a loose circle, their bodies still, their faces empty. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus Chen set his daughter down on a stretcher. He looked at her face. He touched her hair. And something in his expression changed. The focus broke. Threlvix watched as Marcus Chen collapsed. It happened all at once. His legs gave out beneath him. He fell to his knees. His working arm reached out to steady himself, missed the ground, and he toppled sideways into the dirt. A sound came from his throat. Not a scream, not a cry. Something between a laugh and a sob. Something broken. And then it was everywhere. All around the rescue site, humans were falling. Some dropped where they stood. their bodies simply refusing to move another step. Others stumbled to the ground slowly, like puppets with their strings cut. A woman sat down in the middle of the path and started shaking. A man walked 3 steps toward his wife and collapsed into her arms, weeping. The silence shattered into a chaos of sounds. Crying, screaming, laughter that sounded like madness. Names being called. Bodies hitting the ground. The sounds of pain that had been denied for 17 hours, all arriving at once. Threlvix watched the colony doctor, the same woman who had worked with cold efficiency through the night. She was standing beside the medical station, her hands still raised as if to treat a patient. But there was no patient in front of her. Her hands were shaking. Her face was pale. She turned away from the crowd, walked behind a storage container, and fell to her knees. Through the camera, Threlvix could see her body heaving as she vomited into the dirt. "Their bodies are registering the damage," Velshi said. Her voice was quiet, odd. All the pain they suppressed. All the injuries they ignored. It is all arriving at once. Their nervous systems are overwhelming them with signals they should have felt hours ago. Threlvix found Marcus Chun on his screen. The man was lying on the ground now, his body curled around his injured shoulder. Medical workers were approaching him, but he did not seem to notice. He was staring at his daughter on the stretcher nearby. Tears were streaming down his dirt-covered face. His mouth was moving, saying something over and over again. Threlvix activated the audio pickup. "You're okay," Marcus was saying. "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay." That was all. Just those 2 words, repeated endlessly. As if he could not believe them. As if he needed to convince himself they were true. A medical worker tried to touch Marcus's dislocated shoulder. Marcus screamed. The sound was raw and terrible. All the pain of an injury that should have stopped him hours ago, arriving in a single moment. Threlvix turned away from the screen. He could not watch any more dot around the rescue site. Humans held each other and wept. They screamed in pain as their bodies finally told them what they had done. They laughed in relief and cried in agony, sometimes at the same time. The noise was overwhelming, beautiful and terrible. "They knew," Commander Vrexnel said softly. He was standing at the viewport, looking down at the chaos below. They knew this would happen. They knew the cost. And they paid it willingly. Threlvix nodded slowly. For their children. For their pack. Yes. Vrexnel turned to look at him. "Now you understand what humans are. Now you understand why my people stopped fighting this way. The price is too high. The damage is too great." He paused. But humans have not stopped. They have simply learned to control it, to aim it, to wait until they need it. Threlvix looked back at the screens, at the broken, weeping, laughing, screaming humans, at the children being held by parents who had destroyed themselves to save them. "They are monsters," he said quietly. "Yes," Vrexnel agreed. "And heroes. Both at once. That is what makes them terrifying." Below, in the early morning light, the humans of New Svalbard tended to their wounded. They wrapped bandages around torn hands. They set broken bones. They held each other through the pain. The colony doctor had returned to work, her face pale but her hands steady. She moved between patients, treating injuries that would take months to heal. She did not complain. She did not rest. And somewhere in the crowd, Marcus Chen lay on a stretcher next to his daughter. Their hands were intertwined. Neither of them was speaking anymore. They did not need to. The pack was whole again. That was all that mattered. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. 347 species filled the vast circular room. Beings of every shape and size sat in their designated sections, watching the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had bodies made of pure light. All of them were still. All of them were watching. On the display, humans were tearing themselves apart to save their children. Threlvix stood at the speaker's platform, his four-fingered hands clasped tightly in front of him. He had presented his full report without editing, without commentary. Just the raw footage and the data. Let the council see what humanity truly was. Now the footage ended, and silence filled the chamber like water filling a glass. The first to speak was High Counselor Mreshta of the Valori. His species were tall and thin, with translucent skin that showed their internal organs. They had ruled the council for 600 years. "This is unacceptable," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "These creatures are not civilized. They are weapons wearing the faces of people. They have no place among us." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Threlvix saw heads nodding in the sections belonging to other prey species. Fear was written on 1,000 faces. "They suppressed pain," said Counselor Veth of the Korathi delegation. "They ignored injuries that should have stopped them. They worked until their bodies broke." Her voice trembled. "What happens when they direct this ability at an enemy? What happens when they decide to hunt us?" More agreement. More nodding heads. The fear in the chamber was becoming something solid, something dangerous. But not everyone was afraid. Commander Vrexenal stepped forward from the military advisory section. His scales caught the light as he moved to the speaker's platform beside Threlvix. "You speak of weapons," he said. His deep voice carried easily through the chamber. "You speak of threats, but you have not understood what you saw." "We understood perfectly," said High Counselor Mreshta. "We saw predators unleashed. We saw a species that can override their own biology, suppress their own pain, ignore their own limitations. This is a power that has no place in civilized society." Vrexenal shook his massive head. "No, you saw parents saving their children. You saw neighbors helping neighbors. You saw a community that refused to give up on its own people." He paused. The predator was not hunting. The predator was protecting. "There is no difference," someone called from the chamber. "There is all the difference in the world," Vrexenal replied. "A predator that hunts is dangerous. A predator that protects is invaluable." The argument continued. Species took sides. Voices rose and fell. Threlvix stood silently at the platform, watching the debate unfold. He had seen what humans could do. He had seen the terror and the beauty of it. He did not know what the right answer was. Then an old voice spoke, and the chamber went silent. "Enough." Counselor Mrendash of the Veloci rose slowly from her seat. She was ancient, even by the standards of her long-lived species. Her body was small and bent. Her eyes were clouded with age. But when she spoke, everyone listened. The Veloci had been members of the Council longer than any other species. They had watched civilizations rise and fall. They had seen threats come and go. When Mrendash spoke, she spoke with the weight of 10,000 years of history behind her. She walked slowly to the speaker's platform. Each step seemed to take forever, but no one interrupted. No one dared. Finally, she reached the platform and turned to face the chamber. "I have listened to your fears," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. "And I understand them. You see humans and you see predators. You see teeth and claws and terrible strength. You see a species that can override pain and ignore wounds and push past limits that would break any of us." She paused, letting her words settle. "But you have missed the most important part. You have missed what drove them to do these things." She turned and gestured at the holographic display. It flickered to life again, showing Marcus Chun carrying his daughter through the collapsed tunnel. "Look at his face," Mrendash said. "Look at his eyes. What do you see?" No one answered. "I will tell you what I see," she continued. I see love. Not rage, not hunger, not the joy of the hunt. Love. Pure and simple and terrible love. She let the image hang in the air. Yes, humans can become monsters. They can suppress pain and ignore wounds and push their bodies past breaking. This is true. This is frightening. She turned to face the council. But they do not do these things for themselves. They do them for each other, for lore children, for their pack, for the people they love. High Councilor Mreshta rose from his seat. This does not make them safe. This makes them unpredictable. We cannot know when they will decide we are threats to their pack. Rendash smiled. It was a thin, ancient smile. No, we cannot know. But we can choose to become part of their pack. Silence. Think about what we saw, she said. Humans will tear themselves apart for strangers. They will work until their bodies break for neighbors they barely know. They will sacrifice everything for anyone they consider family. She spread her thin arms wide. What happens when they consider us family? No one spoke. We spend so much time asking if humans are dangerous, Rendash said. We should be asking a different question. What would it mean to have humans as our friends? What would it mean to have creatures who will fight to the breaking point, who will suffer beyond reason, who will never give up and never stop, not for their own sake, but for ours? She let the question hang in the air. I have lived a very long time, she said finally. I have seen many species join this council and many species fall. The ones who fall are always the ones who stand alone. The ones who survive are the ones who find allies they can trust completely. She pointed at the image of Marcus Chun. This is a species that can be trusted completely. Not because they are safe. Not because they are predictable. But because when they love with everything they have. With every drop of blood. With every broken bone. With every screaming nerve. She lowered her hand. I vote yes. Humanity should join the council. Not despite what we have seen. Because of it. The vote was held. It was close. But in the end, it passed. Humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. 3 weeks later, Threlvix returned to New Svalbard. He carried the official documents in his case and congratulations from 100 species in his heart. But he was nervous. He had seen what these people could become. He had seen the monster underneath the smile. He found Marcus Chun in the colony's garden. The man was sitting on a bench, his arms still in the sling, watching his daughter play in the flowers. His face was relaxed. His eyes were soft. He looked nothing like the creature that had torn a mountain apart with his bare hands. Ambassador Threlvix, Marcus said, rising to his feet. He extended his working hand. I heard you were coming. Lily, come say hello. The little girl ran over, flowers clutched in her small hands. She smiled up at Threlvix with bright, innocent eyes. Hello, she said. Are you from space? Threlvix looked at her. At her father. At the peaceful garden around them. Yes, he said. I am from space. And I came to tell you that humanity has been accepted into the Galactic Council. You are part of our family now. Marcus smiled. It was a warm smile, a gentle smile. The kind of smile that made you feel safe. But Threlvix had seen those same eyes in the darkness. He had seen what lay behind that smile. He accepted the cup of tea Marcus offered. He sat in the garden and watched Lily play. He talked about treaties and trade agreements and diplomatic relations, and he tried very hard not to think about what would happen to anyone who threatened this man's daughter, because now humanity was part of the pack, and the galaxy would never be the same.